Place yourself in that band. Imagine the goose pimples creeping up your skin as it dawns on you. It's him. Something of that came through again yesterday in stages. As you know, the Holy Fire comes on Holy Saturday into the hands of the Greek Patriarch at Jerusalem at the Holy Sepulchre in time for what? For midnight throughout the Eastern Orthodox world, which does not actually exclude those parts of Dublin which have it. It gets here too. I know because I have a Romanian friend who gets the Holy Light from Dublin. They are this year a week after us. And so right now, the whole Christian world is in Easter praise and exaltation. In the Eastern Orthodox world, it lasts all night. And there is, and it's visible if you want to see it, the coming of that same miraculous flame, lit by the finger of God, to Moscow, allowed by designated airlines, into the hands of a bishop who carries it to the cathedral, where on behalf of the people of Russia, Putin himself receives it and remains himself standing for those hours. Not bad. It can't do any harm to a nation. And if one looks at what is going on, one cannot but feel a shiver. There is something about the unmitigated exaltation of the East which actually must be close to what was there in the Middle East at the first shock. Patriarch after patriarch comes out and cries out, Christos Voskresie! And they all reply, and on it goes. I have friends in Romania, and for these 40-50 days they don't say hello, they say Christos Anviat, and they reply, it's true, he's risen. Actually, the literal is, he is truly risen. That is the greeting for the whole season, going back probably to the early centuries. But what does this glorious King say? It's not the happy clapping that comes through at all. It's this profound Shalom Aleichem, peace unto you. Joy, if authentic, is peaceful. We think we create an atmosphere by noise, the happy clapping. It's superficial. Peace is of a different order. And it cannot be obtained without precisely this other element that comes through the gospel and of which we think on this day. The mercy and healing that comes through forgiveness, given precisely by that same King, already at this moment in time, authority to absolve. There is no joy if the conscience is not at peace. All we can do is lull it, distract it, persuade it, but it's not at peace. And I can tell you, right now, in many a part of the Catholic world, there have been poor confessions, e.g., a line coming up to the altar, invited each one to express sorrow, at the most to say one sin or whatever. Do you think that heals? It doesn't, my friend. I know, because afterwards they come to me and they don't feel they had forgiveness at all. They had things to say and they weren't allowed to. You know who's behind that, don't you? That force, that being that wishes the loss of souls and delights in sacrilege. Which brings me to where I want to land. It was through the providential intervention of John Paul II that this buried wealth of spirituality left to sleep and collect dust in the archives of the Vatican, came back to the fore. It's for our time. It's an update, if you like, of what was given to St. Margaret Mary Alacoque in the 1600s, the Parinamonial. The same, but different. Very much corresponding to the first reading of today, blood and water. She was given to understand that in the water, baptism washes and makes us available. In the blood, which remember cost terribly to our Saviour on the cross and before, awful torture, every drop was enough to wash the sins of the whole world. But all to the last drop came out. Because, as the witness said, out came blood and water. And it went on even afterwards, actually, we can see it from the shroud. Well, we are nourished by the whole sacramental system. And only in churches which have the apostolic succession do we have that direct access. The same linking up with our God as we have precisely the ignition of the Holy Fire. Man touching God. Every time a priest is in the sacramental sphere, he somehow picks it up. God is passing, and things always happen. It's not noisy, it's deep, it's the real thing. This you will not have seen before. It's an Eastern version of the Divine Mercy, with the Polish original under the icon. Notice one detail, the Holy Face. All the icons of the Holy Face in the East have one thing in common, if you look carefully. They have the same traits, which can be traced, where? To, it would seem, the Holy Shroud, the which is echoed also in the napkin at Oviedo. And if one is juxtaposed and placed on top of the other, it matches perfectly, even the bloodstains. This then is our King, who is hurting again. And I want to just share with you today what he has to say at the conclusion of the novena that he gave mankind, which ended yesterday. It's the category of souls that hurt him terribly. Souls who have become lukewarm, tepid. Listen to what he himself says. These souls wound my heart most painfully. My soul suffered the most dreadful loathing in the Garden of Olives because of lukewarm souls. They were the reason I cried out, Father, take this cup away from me, if it is your will. For them, the last hope of salvation is to run to my mercy. And he goes on in greater detail. Listen to his pain. He talks about this category in this vein. There are souls who thwart my efforts. You may have the experience of praying and praying and praying for instance, such and such, but it has no effect. The reason is this. We are impetrating and obtaining graces for them, and those graces are hitting that soul, but being deflected by hardness of heart. Why? A grace can only ever be offered. It can never be in such a way coercive as to take away free will. God stands back in awe of the gift that he's given his creature. No one is compelled to go to glory. So, souls, he goes on, without love or devotion, souls full of egoism and selfishness, proud and arrogant souls. Now, pride is usually the leitmotif of the song of life of the soul of the hardened of heart. And it's not surprising, because pride was the original sin of the one who's trying to get them. You listen to a person who is full of himself. He has nothing to learn, he talks a lot, he will not be interrupted, and he's convinced that he has all the truth. There's not much point, actually, in trying at that point. All one can do is pray for him. And how many souls are in that mode right now? He goes on. Souls full of deceit and hypocrisy. Lukewarm souls who have hardly enough warmth to keep themselves alive. My heart cannot bear it. All my graces that I pour down on them daily flow off them as of rock. I cannot bear them because they are neither good nor bad. Just the day before yesterday, there was a knock at the door. I opened it, and there was a very large beard before me, white in colour and getting ever longer. So I invited the beard to come in, and behind it came Father Michael Marr. So over dense Italian coffee, we fixed the universe. And 2 hours later, I was enriched by this bit, which I share with you. He reminded me of something he'd given me a couple of years ago that he'd been involved with. It was an interview with a certain Kevin, who was given the stage by Father Michael Ross at a conference. And Kevin wanted to be discreet. He didn't want this person to be known because the person in question asked for discretion, but his name did slip out, his first name, Bruno. And this was the story. Bruno was some kind of American Protestant by upbringing. He was in a situation of mental perplexity and trouble of soul. He went to a friend of his, I think it was Kevin himself, and said so. And he was given this simple advice. There's one thing you can do. Find an open Catholic church. Walk in. And especially if you can find one where the Blessed Sacrament is exposed, stay there for a while. Do nothing, but just gaze. There was actually a church nearby where there was adoration, and he found it. He went in with his Protestant mixed-up faith, sat down, and did nothing. Suddenly, something inexplicable started to happen. In a moment of time, as he gazed on the monstrance, time stood still. He saw all his past. He saw his soul as Jesus saw it. He saw all his mortal sins from the age of 7. That was the first wave. He then saw all his venial sins, and then he saw a terrible category which was actually a speciality of Catholics, which he was warned about at that time. Do you know what it was? It was the sin of irreverence before the Blessed Sacrament. And he saw the horror of it in his Protestant faith that he had. And then something awful happened. He felt such a terrible pain and anxiety that he felt he was going to die unless he was given one thing. And this was part of the grace that came through. The infused grace was this. He was given to understand that the only thing that would take away all with God's own authority was absolution, and that only a Catholic priest could give it. He was also given to understand in the same outpouring of light that also a Greek priest could, but he was given to understand that there were complications on that level. Therefore he came back to his friend and he said, I feel I'm going to die of a broken heart if I don't get this straight away. His friend, as it happens, had a friend in the Marymount of Priest, of which Father Ma is the director in this part of the world. And he knew that he was a good priest with depth of interior life and pastoral experience. Go to that priest, tell him what you've told me. I won't go into the way it was handled, there's no need to. But what I do say is this. Does that not tell you several things in one? This power that he at this moment in the upper room gave is ours. And we are worse than Protestants. Why? We abuse grace, which leads to what? Hardening of the heart. And nothing is worse than a hardened heart. Why? Not even the Spirit of our God can any more work upon it. It does it all itself and has nothing more to learn. After Mass, we'll go straight into adoration and we'll honour the Lord in His mercy, and we'll have a little procession. If it's not raining, we'll go outside the church, just round the yard and come back, and we'll have benediction, and we'll also include the specific devotion to Divine Mercy, the chaplet, and the honouring of this image, which we'll bless. And we'll use the hymn, which I may have told you before. I was in trouble because I asked to give it, and I asked for help from then Sister Faustina, because they wanted one composed in a hurry. Please give me a hymn, and it came straight away out of the blue, words and music, so we'll use that, it doesn't do any harm. Our God is close to us. Let's love Jesus and console him there where he's hurt.